Yes, that is the graduation march, sometimes known as pomp and circumstance. And you're saying, Damian, why are you singing that, whistling it as it were, from the Granary? Because I'm asking a question. Are agricultural universities still relevant in this day and age? Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. We're going to find out when I talk to my friends here in the Granary.
You ready for a conversation with some real farmers about real issues? And the best part, you're invited. So pour yourself a drink, grab a snack, most importantly, pull up a chair. Welcome to the Granary. Hey guys.
All right, guys, you heard the topic. This is something that you and I have actually discussed. I said, let's do it in the Granary. Are agricultural universities still relevant? It's the mid-2020s, for crying out loud. We got all kinds of AI. We got a technological revolution going on. We've got consolidation going on in the industry. We've got people making a whole bunch of money that are out here becoming pipe fitters and HVAC people. And yet we're still cranking out folks with agricultural degrees. And so I'm questioning you. Are they still relevant? The land grant whole thing came about in the 1860s. Great, wonderful. Does it still matter? Tommy Roach is my guest. He is also our sponsor. He's with Nachurs, the sponsor of this show, joined by Texas Todd Kimbrell with XtremeAg and the founder of XtremeAg, Kelly Garrett. All right, you got kids that went to Iowa State. You went to Iowa State, Texas Tech. You didn't go to college. I went to an ag school. I tell you what, you're doing better than a whole bunch of people that I graduated with. I'm not sure that it matters, and I'm also still questioning the value of an agricultural university today and moving forward. I can make the argument both ways. Let's start with you.
You want the long answer or short answer?
Short, then we'll expand.
No and no.
They're not relevant anymore.
And they have not been willing to change their ways. They're still trying to prove, and we talked about it earlier, they're still throwing out 1960 information. And I realize some universities are better than others. We can get into that. But in general terms, they got some changing to do.
All right.
He's really correct. The degree in agronomy that Connor got from Iowa State has been useful on the farm. The agronomic knowledge he has and things like that has really helped. It has leapfrogged him ahead of where I was at the same age. However, some of the research that the universities put out it's not progressive enough. You talk about, I've heard of the 1960s stuff, but even if it's 15-year-old information, and so to a farmer that wants to continue to do things the way they always have, it probably is relevant information. But to people that are trying to be progressive and to push and to learn new things, the idea of what the university is supposed to do is this cutting edge research. It's not cutting edge anymore.
Agricultural universities are supposed to be at the front end of this thing. Cutting edge. Are they anymore?
Hey, in production it's tough. I struggle with that a lot. But on the flip side of that too, like the ag, eco, and policy side, I see a lot of good things coming out of that on specifically policy. I mean, there's a lot of good things there. So it's
two totally different things.
Right.
So if you're talking about that, it's one thing, because I agree with you. But in production terms, they're still trying to prove why broadcast fertility it works, why foliar fertility doesn't work. And I get the blessing, or the not so much blessing. I travel the U.S. Some universities are better than others. I mean, I've done research for watermelons. Clemson University's kind of the voice of the Southeast, and they're good at it. I mean, LSU, sugarcane. If I was going to do cotton research, which I do, unfortunately, it is not going to be the land-grant University of Texas. It will be Texas Tech, because they're a whole lot more in tune with what's going on in the cotton world than, in my opinion, A&M is.
Well, and that's geographical, because the cotton universe is right within a few minutes of Lubbock, and so you can see that. So here's the thing. You're talking about the value of an agricultural university in terms of its research, and that tends to be all about production. And you're saying some of them are good, and then some of them are antiquated. And Iowa State's over here, second biggest ag state in the union, and they're cranking out, Vern's coming out with, information from the 1960s. Grant, he actually, I guess, was born in the 1960s, but the thing is, or 40s, but the thing is, I guess I can argue that you just said that, first off, they're not all created equal, and secondly, they each have their specialty area, but Todd says, well, about the economics. I can argue that I get a lot of stuff from Purdue, University of Illinois, Iowa State, School of Agricultural Economics, because that tends to be data. But again, talking about relevance, we did this before. I might be able to get that data compiled from an AI source. I don't know that I need 14 professors in the agricultural economics department with 28 teacher's assistants and assistants under that compiling this data. 2 people could do this. I think that we still might have the issue of overbloated institutions that are doing stuff that's repetitive, even on the agricultural economics side. That reminds me of the 1960s.
I could see that. I use AI a lot when I'm compiling numbers and statistics, things like that. But I sometimes question if it's relevant. I don't always know if I trust it. What Iowa State Extension puts forward for the custom rates and things like that, we use that very extensively for the we custom farm about 1,000 acres, and we do use that information very extensively. Is it overbloated how they gather the information? Maybe. I don't know, but that is one area that we do find it valuable.
Universities tend to be like governments, and governments tend to have a lot more employees doing repetitive tasks. So that's where I'd say relevant, sure. Efficient, no.
No, I would agree with the efficiency probably.
So I do research all over North America. And the thing about land-grant universities, go back to what you just said, it's about government. Government tends to be too big. It is, for me, cost prohibitive to do any research with, generally speaking, any research with land-grant universities because it costs too dadgum much money, where I can go to a CRO, third-party researcher, and do it for a fraction of the cost. So me being a little fertilizer company, is that the same viewpoint as everybody else in the industry, and maybe they just don't get to see what I'm trying to promote? I don't know.
Well, remember, there's been a big knock that agriculture universities were hijacked by big ag. We hear that from in and outside of agriculture, and so they'll come up with whatever findings they're paid to find.
Yeah.
And I've heard that before. You've heard that. All right. You didn't go to agricultural university. What do you think you missed? What are you, 43 years old?
42, yeah.
All right. So 20 years ago, you would have gotten out. What do you think you didn't get? What do you think you've missed, if anything?
I wish, which had probably not to do with the ag. Actually, not at all.
No, I'm not talking about the getting drunk and the party and all that stuff. We know that.
You didn't do any of that, though.
Actually, I didn't. I got to miss all that. I had to work, but I went to a technical school.
Do you think you missed anything?
The business and finance portion, I do wish I could have had more knowledge on that, because it took me a long time to figure that out the hard way.
You learned it on your own.
Yes. So
and
that
you made some mistakes.
Absolutely.
But you know that's how how best learning happens, is by.
And that's fair. But I mean, I really started from scratch with no know-how on any of that stuff. So it was tough. So I haven't been, never went, so I don't know what exactly I missed.
Do you use, as a 42-year-old, do you use agriculture university data today? You sound like you do.
Probably limited, but a little bit.
There's a reason he said limited. Because I find that every state has published NPK rates by what your soil test says. I mean, every state does it. And when were those studies done? 50s?
Yeah, I was going to say 60, 70 years ago, 70 years ago.
And
60 years ago.
by God, I am not going to change those numbers. I'll give you an example. I've worked with the extension station in Lubbock, which is A&M. It's a joint appointment between Tech and A&M. But they found that Lubbock is the cotton capital of the world.
Right.
40, 30 continuous counties around there grow more cotton than the world if it rains. So we proved that the potassium numbers were not accurate. You needed to put on more potassium than what published Texas A&M data said. Even though there was this pile of numbers that proved it, what would Texas A&M not do? They would not change their recommendations.
That's true.
Because the old guard people in College Station would not do it. And I could show you examples all across the country that happens.
Which the problem then is, first off, they are paid for by us. They were set up by a taxpayer. Land grant, meaning the federal government granted land to be sold to raise money for that school, and there are still tax dollars that go into there, et cetera, et cetera. They're doing a disservice. They're doing a disservice as a bureaucracy of, no, we're not changing that. You can argue that they are being irresponsible with the money that we gave them to perpetuate what they're supposed to be doing.
To complete research for the American farmer.
Yeah.
That's what their job was.
Yeah.
And now they're not doing it.
To technically, and I'm a big land grant school fan, to advance the agricultural and mechanical arts. And it was all about things that we needed for a growing country: more prosperity, more growth, more production, engineering, and education. And my problem is I think that they've veered from that. My alma mater is not known as the ag school that it once was, and I think that they are fine with that.
Go ahead. Who was that?
That's a place called Purdue University.
Okay.
But
hey, let's lay it all out here.
Well,
don't be bashful.
Well, I don't think that they're doing the service to the industry that they once did, and more importantly, that they were set up to have done in the 1860s. I think they've lost their vision. I think they're much more about being a liberal arts. They've got liberal arts programs and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, they're still an ag campus, but I don't think they're on any way cutting edge. And I think that they've sort of hoarded out. And well, what does that do? That doesn't help the kid from a farm in Indiana to go and become successful in agriculture. So they've lost sight of the Damian Masons.
And I'm among.
So are they relevant? Probably, maybe still relevant, but have they lost sight of their vision at incarnation? 1,000,000%. They're supposed to be to take kids like me off the farm that could go there and help advance this business.
So we're talking about, I'm sitting here amongst XtremeAg guys, and even the people that aren't here. We've proven that it doesn't take a pound of nitrogen to produce a pound of corn, a bushel of corn.
Right.
But yet, you go to any land grant, any university, and they still push the notion that's got to happen.
Yeah.
When Connor was a junior at Iowa State, he told me he had to write a variable rate prescription for nitrogen for corn. And I said, well, are you going to write it the way that we do at home? And so let me say, the way we would do it at home, the higher yielding ground gets less nitrogen and is probably down towards 0.3 or 0.4 pounds of nitrogen per bushel, up to, 0.8 or 9, maybe 1, depending on if it rains, on the lower yielding ground. And the reason is it actually probably does take a pound of nitrogen to produce a bushel of corn, but why don't we give credit to the organic?
Exactly.
Why do we think it all has to be synthetic? And so I'm putting less nitrogen on the higher yielding areas. And I said, so are you going to write it the way we write it, or how are you going to do it? He said, Dad, if I write it the way you write it, I'll flunk. And I've told the professors at Iowa State that I'm like, they know that they're behind and they're trying to catch up. So I give them credit for that, but it's still a disservice to the farmer. And I think some of it is, government has gotten bigger, and the university is a bit of an extension of the government, and they're not very nimble, and they don't want, and it's hard to change.
Well, also, what's the incentive to change? Are they going to go out of business?
No.
So there's this thing. What would you, to be relevant? Well, I asked if ag universities are relevant, and okay, you said I probably missed out. If I had gone to an ag university, I would have gotten the business and the economic part of it and some of that stuff. And we all agreed you learn a lot of that on the fly by coming out here and getting in the real world anyhow. But yeah, the fundamentals would have been there. What do you want from them now? As a 42-year-old Texas farmer doing very well, you're successful. What could an ag university, doesn't have to be in Texas, could be anywhere. What would they do for you to become relevant?
They still have scientists, so to speak, involved in this extension, and I don't want to slight these people at all because some of them do a lot of really good work. So there's like scientists, like soil scientists, that test carbon and kind of really give us a direction on what the actual carbon stuff is happening. So I would say like on a real deep level, like the scientific stuff that's really hard for us to do or to learn, that stuff's really important, and I still push for that. So I guess it'd be more like that, and to get more progressive in general, which,
So you want the science.
yes.
Do you need a notice that comes from the agriculture, the Texas Texas A&M extension? Because that used to be a thing, right? You get bulletins, and we get newsletters from Purdue, you know. Publications, if you will, and that kind of stuff. Does it do anything for you?
No, not really.
So we just answered there's a lot of irrelevance for our friend Todd. All right, is it relevant to you? You're a farmer. Does Iowa State right now do anything for Garrett land and cattle?
The custom work data, there's some, like some marketing data, things like that when they're talking about, federal crop levels, things like that. The agronomy, I wish was more progressive.
I'd say the data, again, I think the data, but I think that if it takes you 47 cast members and faculty members to compile this, okay, great. To me, it's like the government. Okay, yeah, you did this thing, but you didn't do it in any way that private industry probably would have done so.
Well, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm totally bashing land-grant universities, because every university has a segment that they're good at. Kansas State and irrigation. University of Illinois has done a lot recently with like strip tillage. And those are great. I could go out west.
Colorado State on something on beef.
Potatoes. Oregon. Right. I've been doing potato research at Oregon State for the last 10 years. Great, but one of the problems is, and it's because of it's big government. It takes me 3 to 5 years to do the research, to find something new and get it started. Whereas, big land grant universities they're not that nimble. They can't just change course in a blink of an eye.
They can't follow the science like you and I want.
No, they can't.
Okay, we talked a lot about the research. That's cool. Let's talk about the next generation. Your daughter wants to be in agriculture. Your son wants to be in agriculture. They're 14 and 18 years old. You going to send them to an ag school?
My daughter really is dead set on going, but my son doesn't want to, and I'm frankly not going to force him to. But I would encourage him to do some finance and business classes. But with things like XtremeAg's research, or honestly, Tommy Roach is a wealth of knowledge in our soils. He's one of the most knowledgeable guys where we farm and understands my soil.
But you can't go and hang out with Tommy for 4.5 years and watch football games and drink. Well, you probably could, but that's what you're going to do if you go to college. But is your kid going to go to college and would you want them to go to college so they could, even if 2 years of it was unnecessary, come back with the other 2 years that was valuable?
I would encourage it, but my son's not going to. My daughter will absolutely do it, but my son won't. So that's a loaded question. I'm 50-50 on that question. I wouldn't encourage her to go if I didn't think she wouldn't gain something. Right. So now, is my son going to miss stuff? I think so, but I'm encouraging to do some kind of finance and business course, not even with a university. I don't even care where it is.
All right, you got a kid that, 3 kids obviously, but the 2 that are with us, there's the one that graduated, one went for 1 year. What's the one that went 1 year missing? I can say a lot of things, but also I can say maybe not that much.
I sometimes think there's value. I went to Iowa State. I lasted 3 semesters and I quit, and then I worked construction and stuff. And I didn't want to come home till Amber did, honestly. And so I stayed in Ames for 5 years. And I see the value of going and living away from home for a while and being on your own and then coming back, because you're going to grow up and do some things in that time. You have some personal growth in yourself, and then I sometimes feel like you're always viewed as a kid, because you never have that disconnect. You know, even Kale going away for a year, he still went away for a year, things like that. You know, then when he first came back and things like that, you know, he was still young. There was a couple rough patches. Now
That's not ag. That's not ag university specific.
That's just
part of
growth.
growth.
That's just growing up. That's just life. And so there's value to going to school. There's more than academics. You're learning to live with people that are outside your comfort zone, and you're learning to get along with people, and you're just learning to grow up a little bit. And so regardless if it's an ag school, I think there's value in doing it and just broadening your horizons.
What do the ag universities need to do to remain relevant in your point? You've talked a lot about research, and I get that, but it's beyond research to remain relevant. Is that it?
Well, that was their mission statement, and they've kind of drifted away from it. That's the whole problem.
Well, also, that extension thing was really important in the late 1800s because you had essentially a whole bunch of settlers that were 8th grade educated. And all of a sudden, the extension was you're supposed to have this educated person that went out to the counties, like this one right here, and say, here's the better way to grow potatoes, and here's the better way to can green beans to feed your family. I mean, you're talking about 140 years ago.
Right.
The extension of the education was the whole concept. You can argue that the internet has made a lot of that antiquated at best.
Even before the internet, it was antiquated.
It was antiquated. So if the extension is less relevant today, and if the research that's being done is apparently they're still using 60-year-old, 70-year-old recommendations, then I think it comes down to the business part of it and the compiling of data. But there's a whole bunch of money that goes to those places that's a pretty low return on investment.
Now you're talking about compiling data, that thing in your pocket with AI now. I mean, that's where that's going.
But it has to have a source, and that source could be University of Illinois and Michigan State and Cal Poly. Then it conglomerates all that and amalgamates it into so in other words, does AI get the data if we don't have the Cal Poly data to start with?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, my son, I've started keeping data, electronic data, since 2011. I can tell you every single yield and every square foot of every farm we farmed since 2011. So my son's going to have all that data somewhere to put it now and compile it now with lots of different layers. I think someday that data that I started collecting back then is going to be real vital going forward. At some point, they're going to be able to look at weather patterns and all the different things, stuff we haven't even thought about yet.
But do we need someone, Todd, at Oklahoma State that gathered it and then did the overlays and the analyses, and that's where their value is? They then can take that and then make it compile it into, now it's, here's why this matters.
Maybe today, but I think AI is going to solve that.
So since we're in class and I have to raise my hand.
Yes, Mr.
So
Roach.
here's where I think we need to go with this. Take what land-grant universities did, 60s, 70s, use that as the baseline. Everybody nowadays does, take soil tests, take tissue tests, and that should be on these guys' plate to figure out, to do the tweaks to make it meaningful, to take what Iowa State did. Take their data and make it meaningful to their 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 acre operation. I don't think land-grant universities are ever going to catch up with how fast things are changing. I mean, look how fast does a corn hybrid stick around? How fast does a soybean hybrid or variety stick around?
Well, even
2 or 3 years.
Tommy, those companies used to be right in bed with all of those land-grant universities, and I don't think they are as much anymore. They went and set up their own research more and more. Am I right about that?
No, you're right.
They're doing it less in conjunction with an ag college and more just on their own because they're moving at a faster pace.
That's right.
Well, my point is, Kelly said he wants to be able to farm by the square foot.
Yep.
And I think he's right. I don't need to know about any of his square feet.
No, you don't.
So my AI, if I have enough data compiled, it ought to be able to, at some point, I'm not saying it's there today, I'm not saying that. It ought to take my data on my farm with the way I managed it and spit out a okay, here's your analyticals, but right. Do you throw a ball or a strike? Analytics, like sports.
Yeah, right.
Like that's where I think it's headed. Now, I don't think there's a university in that chain, though. That's what I'm getting at.
You think that they become an unnecessary, they're not part of the conduit and they didn't add the value on the way. But what if the Iowa State thing is compiling stuff from their labs and then doing the analytics, and then it makes it so you can extrapolate a tool from that? Like, oh, you know what they're doing in Iowa right now, and we know this because Iowa State followed 47 operators in this geography, and they experimented with this, and now I know that I can, I don't know, cut $47 out of production because of those things or whatever. What if they are still doing something because of the ability to, I don't know, harness their expertise in a geography, to your point, and then spits it back out?
Yeah, I mean, it could. I don't think we have any idea what's coming with it, with AI, and maybe that is maybe they have their own program that does it for us.
Well, presumably the person from Ames, Iowa, that's a PhD, is supposed to be able to then check and see that this AI stuff that you're getting is actually not wrong. I mean, right now, what if you put in there, should I spread mercury on my soil? And it says, yes, mercury is a brilliant micronutrient or whatever.
I mean, that's fair.
I don't know. I'm still asking the question. I asked you the question. Are they still relevant?
That's a fair point, but I mean, I think if you have all the data organized, you'll be able to fact check that really quick, I think.
Well, I think we've already decided that in many ways the extension thing has outlived its relevance. And I've worked for the extension people, and I like those people a lot, but my goodness, look at where we are just from 5 years ago.
I think that with the consolidation in ag and the operation size growing and things like that, I think that the large operations need to conduct our own research. As you said, my square foot doesn't matter to you, and that's quickly changing, where operations are growing more and more, and we need to understand what's going on. And we much like you talked about in earlier taping, the soil's like the ocean, that we have so much to learn, and it's so it's so much about our operation. We need to learn on our own soil.
And something as basic as, and this doesn't take a rocket scientist, something as basic as a micronutrient. Mm-hmm. And I the vast majority of these, what we're talking about, would tell you they see no benefit of micros. And that is one thing that I could disagree with every day of the week and twice on weekends.
And I do as well.
Yes, you do.
So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. And you keep going down the road of fertility, but we also do research. We did like genetics and all that stuff. So I'm torn on it. The one that, Todd seems to think that AI can do it. I don't think we're quite there yet. I pull up stuff on things like land values, on numbers, on what I know you say, well, USDA does some of that stuff about production from geography or even country to country. And I look at some of those analyses and I do see it's relevant to me for now.
But that's different than, so he mentioned earlier about, economics and statistics, that falls in that bucket.
Yep.
I guess what I'm talking about is
the production. I know.
That's a totally different bucket,
I agree.
and they're way behind.
I agree. Yeah. And again, I'm not even sure that they're far enough ahead on the economics and the numbers, because I think that they've got huge departments that are compiling that. It's still a gravy train to be a professor, unfortunately. I mean, let's face it, you don't have to do that much.
I hate to throw somebody else under the bus, but
well, we're doing it.
Look how far USDA misses yield every single time they try to do it. I mean, it's not even fun.
So you can even argue about whether all of those staff of statisticians are relevant, and that's another thing. But back to the university thing, I guess. We asked the question, are they relevant? So what did the university, does it just need to fold? We won't be able to watch those Texas Tech Red Raiders because, we like to watch the football.
Thank you.
To the university, and I've bet money on them and won and lost. Thank you. Should the ag university just go away? Should Ames just become a nice little apartment complex?
No, I don't believe so. As we said, the data we get, things like that, are still relevant and still very useful. The research the research just needs to catch up to the times if possible. I would sure like to give them the chance to do that.
It's a nice place to send your kid.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's pretty expensive just if we're going to send them somewhere. I mean, you can boarding schools, hell, you can send them to Cayman Islands or something like that.
That's expensive too.
I'm aware. What do you think should happen?
I don't know. I like it. I think maybe more focus on the ag policy stuff. I don't know. Iowa State's different. The problem in my state is
Our state.
Yeah. Texas A&M is trying to cover all of Texas. We got 5 states in one. I mean, it really is that big.
Yeah. Think about the difference.
It's tough.
Do you think the High Plains is the same as Coastal Bend?
It's so. I'm more like Iowa than the High Plains.
Exactly.
I mean,
It's like 5 states, but let's face it, you've got one uniting thing, and that's that your pompous personalities and overbearing nature makes you really all Texans.
that's true.
Who's the guy sitting here in a dunce cap?
Yeah.
A dunce cap. I like
Dunce
that.
cap.
No, it's a mortarboard. It means that I'm scholarly,
Yeah.
professorial.
Yeah, but like think about the variability across Texas. Well, I would assume that Texas A&M has research farms around the state in
They
different
do,
areas.
and they do.
Iowa State has that as well. It just the research needs to be more relevant.
I agree, and they do. And I was talking about your square foot not mattering to me, but I'll even go a step further. My neighbor's square foot really doesn't matter to me either.
I agree.
Because
with that.
he's managed so much differently than me. Well, how does Extension manage that?
Right.
Me and a neighbor, you can't.
Okay, so now when you point that out, maybe we are giving these universities, the universities has to go for generalities and the average, and then when you want to drill down to the specifics that you and I do, they can't.
Well, that's why I said
Maybe we're complaining
we
about
have to
something
use
that's
them
impossible.
as a baseline,
Right.
Yeah.
and then take it from there
Right.
on to the own farm deal.
Yes,
that as your-
but the
use that
baseline
as
should
your-
still be past the 1960s.
That's
right.
That's
Yeah.
accurate.
If you want me to fix the agricultural universities, first off, and I love these people, I've worked for them, I think start phasing out the extension because it just has a decreasing value every day. Really, it's become antiquated. Number 2, I'd say you better bring the ag back to the ag university because a lot of these ag universities, I think Kansas State's doing a great job, but I go to my own alma mater at Purdue and I'm like, you're throwing ag out the window here all the time and putting in the other stuff. And obviously, I think shaking up things, get rid of professor tenures, and all of a sudden you've got that research gets a lot more modern. If all of a sudden you're on the hot seat that you got to produce instead of just coast, I think things get a lot more modernized. That's how I'd fix the ag universities,
You're going
make
to
them
get
more
rid of
relevant.
professor tenures, or are you also going to put in term limits for?
Politicians?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that too.
I mean, what's the difference?
I agree.
I'll mention something about research. I'm on a research committee with Texas corn producers. We changed our method. We used to have the researchers from mostly Extension come to us with ideas, with projects, and about a couple years ago we're like, this is irrelevant to what we want. We completely scrapped that. We're going to tell you what we want. The producers are from around the state, as we are. So now we've completely done a 180 with the way we research there. Now we're going to them about what we want to see. I think it's going to take more of that mentality to help. It's already starting to help. But I think we were in such a rut of letting the researchers research what they thought we wanted or needed.
Yep.
Now we've reciprocated that, and it's already started on a better path.
So all of a sudden we're going to you with our need, and boom, start from there.
And it's going to take it's going to be a culture change.
Yes, it
to
is.
make that happen.
And I talked about culture changes, getting rid of tenure also. All right, last thought. Make ag universities more relevant. How do I do it?
That's a great idea.
Right there.
I mean, there are so many, like we go to commodity every year, and there are so many people from the different state agencies, or Iowa Corn Board or ASA, that walk through there, and they're still back in the 60s, 70s. But I mean, slowly but surely, there's a new wave of growers that are finally opening up to this new way of thinking.
Well, let me just
And
tell
it's
you
great.
about old way of thinking. Every ag school in this country, I'm sure, is still trying to tell their kids, we got to maximize production because, by God, we're all going to starve if we don't feed the world. And that is 40-year-old information because it's not even in a situation anymore because of the vast surpluses. So anyway, I got Todd Kimbrell from Texas. I got Texas resident also, Tommy Roach with Nachurs. They are a sponsor of this show and many of our other shows. So grateful for them to be here. Joined by my man Kelly Garrett right over here, who's really actually kind of envious because he doesn't like it when I look smarter than him. And when I put on this get-up, it absolutely kind of intimidated you, didn't it? I mean, very academic.
His cap is bigger than yours
Very,
still.
very academic, you would say, right? I would say very, I mean, like, I feel like I get up and give like the commencement address. Anyway, so next time, thanks for being here. Thanks for pulling up a chair. If you enjoyed this, share it with somebody can benefit from. We asked the questions: are agricultural universities still relevant? Not a great endorsement from this table. But anyway, give us your comments. We appreciate you joining us here. Until next time, cheers, and thank you for Nachurs for being the sponsor. Cheers from the Granary.